Welcome into this conversation about Notre Dame football. I'm Tim Wilcox, and now I'm joined by Tyler. He's a junior at Notre Dame who has been around the Notre Dame football season a lot this year and the success they're having right now. This conversation is taking place just 12 hours after Notre Dame's big win against Penn State last night. So, Tyler, welcome in. Thank you for joining the show today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Great timing as well. Exciting for all of us right now around the University of Notre Dame, whether it's in fan circles and student media as well. Really looking forward to having the opportunity to partake in the national championship game. It's going to be a great couple of weeks here.
I'm sure. So, Tyler, for our viewers, just tell us a little more about yourself, your involvement in student media at Notre Dame.
Yeah, so within student media itself, I'm heavily involved both with the campus radio station WVFI. I'm one of our two sports directors there, so I've covered a lot of games, both with football and other major sports at Notre Dame in that capacity. I also serve as the sports editor for the Observer, which is Notre Dame's student newspaper outlet. Been around for I think more than 50 years now. And whatever games I don't cover with the student radio station, I'm usually covering it in that capacity. So I started the year with both of those things as my primary outlets for being around Notre Dame sports. And then about fourth of the way into the football season, I became the radio voice of Notre Dame hockey as well. So that became my major commitment. And I actually didn't get to see any Notre Dame football games in person from the end of September all the way through until the playoff game we hosted, because I was always on the road with hockey whenever football had a home game. But it'll be exciting coming up next weekend because I will have a chance to go down to Atlanta with that being a Monday night game. So those are kind of the big three things on my plate right now. But of course, even when I haven't been at football games, I've been watching and following all the Twitter feeds closely from afar. So it's been an exciting season from start to finish, no doubt.
Yeah, I want to start with just your level of excitement last night. How were you feeling watching the game when you saw that Penn State victory, win over Penn
Yeah,
State?
I mean, it was it was nervous all throughout because, toward the end of that first half, I really got the sense that Penn State was winning handily in the trenches. Notre Dame was starting to get banged up, especially on the offensive line, and those injuries on the defensive line that have piled up over the season and that the Irish have done so well to mask and overcome throughout the year were starting to expose themselves and create an issue for Notre Dame against that potent Penn State ground attack. But then Steve Angeli comes in for a drive and sparks the offense a little bit. You get that field goal before halftime, and then come out and grasp momentum to start the second half. And man, it felt like in that fourth quarter, Notre Dame won and lost that game three or four different times with all of the opportunities they had to go down the field in the final 10 minutes. Penn State had the same chances, but then that late interception seals it. Mitch Jeter, who has been a question mark all throughout the second half of the season with his injuries, comes on to kick the game-winning field goal. And man, it just felt surreal to know that I am a student here at Notre Dame, and this football team's going to the national championship. And I mean, you come to a school like this understanding the history and how much lore there is around the opportunities this program has had to play at high levels and compete for national championships, but it hasn't happened all that often in my generation. I grew up watching the 2012 BCS championship game. They got smacked around by Alabama. Same thing happened in the last two playoff appearances in 2018 and 2020. But I mean, now it feels like they can beat anybody, and it's so special to be here in South Bend right now as they are going to play for a national championship.
I'm sure. So Notre Dame, it's a smaller school. Some people may not know, I believe somewhere around 8,000 undergrad. Maybe you can tell me a better number. But beginning of the season, what were the expectations going in, and has this season gone down anywhere close to what you expected?
Yeah, the expectations for me were always playoff or bust. I mean, we knew that at this point in Marcus Freeman's tenure, it was his team. Most of what Brian Kelly had brought in had pretty much moved on, and Freeman's culture was pretty much fully intact through two seasons. And also with the 12-team playoff having its first season and Notre Dame's schedule being a pretty relatively easy one going in, aside from the opener at Texas A&M. We knew that Notre Dame had a very good shot to at least go 11-1, make the playoff, and hopefully do some damage there. And it started off great, obviously, with the win week 1 at Texas A&M. Everybody felt at that point, especially with what happened to Florida State throughout the year, that that was going to be the one game. You get through that one, you start 1-0, and now you're on the fast track to the playoff. And well, we all know what happened here a week after that with Northern Illinois. So at that point, there were a lot more discussions about the security of Marcus Freeman's job, the security of Riley Leonard's place leading the quarterback room, than any talks about the playoff, because we had all seen what happened 2 years ago when the same situation unfolded. Notre Dame goes to Ohio State, a tough environment, plays well, but loses in Marcus Freeman's first regular season game. And then you come home and lose a bad one as a heavy favorite against Marshall. And that team went 8-4. Now, it was a different type of situation with a backup quarterback coming in that year. But I mean, I think everybody felt at that point that we were going to see something similar down the stretch here. But in hindsight, Northern Illinois was the best thing that could have happened to this team. I don't know if this team still has one loss right now, if that one loss wasn't to Northern Illinois, which is crazy to say, but they've rallied around that game, and they've made the feeling of that game a point of emphasis that we are not going to run into that and feel that way ever again. And we are going to use that as motivation to just keep winning and take every game as seriously as we possibly can. And they've done an incredible job, starting obviously with Coach Freeman and the entire coaching staff, to get this thing through all the way to the championship game now.
Yes, what a journey it's been this year for the Fighting Irish. But tell me about your journey. Tell me about maybe any of the trips you've taken. I know you went to Indiana, or the game where Notre Dame faced Indiana, but just tell me about the games that you were at in person.
Yeah, so the first one for me was Texas A&M. I went down there with a good friend of mine, Jacob Irons, who's a senior, and we were on the student radio call for that game. And I mean, we put in our credential request. It went through, got approved. We were feeling good. Got down to the stadium, and we get to the press box and find out they don't have a place for us to do the game. So we end up probably about 45, 50 minutes before kickoff, walking down with one of the employees up in the press box down to a spot on the concourse. It was like a camera platform behind one of the corners of the end zone, about 30 rows back. And we do the game from there off of Jake's hotspot. It goes without a hitch. And it was one of the most memorable nights of and not just my student media career, but my life in general, especially for Notre Dame to get that win. So I went down to that game. That was incredible, obviously. The only other road game I was at was Purdue 2 weeks after that, when they put up 66 points. That was right after Northern Illinois. So that was a point in the season where we were like, who is this team really? Because we just saw you lose to a non-power conference school at home, and then absolutely shellac Purdue. Obviously, Purdue was very bad this year, but that was a fun game as well. And then, yeah, ended up doing the Indiana game as well as my first Notre Dame football game attended in person in almost 3 months, and having college game day for that was truly a remarkable scene. Friday night game, the crowd was incredible. There was a little bit of snow leading into the game too, which is exactly what everybody around here wanted. And the game didn't disappoint as well, starting with the 98-yard rushing touchdown by Jeremiah Love, and Notre Dame going in full control from there. So yeah, been a memorable season. I mean, Notre Dame's obviously been all over the country playing football. They've been in, I think, 3 or 4 different NFL stadiums now, and they're going to have a second game in Atlanta this season after already playing Georgia Tech there. So yeah, it's been a pretty remarkable year on all fronts.
As you look ahead to that January 20th date in Atlanta, what are you looking forward to most? Maybe what are you keeping your eyes on in tonight's game later today?
Yeah, well, I mean, Ohio State's obviously playing like the team to beat right now. So I'll be very interested to see who comes out of that game and how well Ohio State continues to play against a Texas team that's been pretty good all year, aside from those 2 blemishes against Georgia, but certainly deserves to be in that spot, and had to overcome a lot in that Arizona State game last week in the Peach Bowl. But man, I'm just excited to see who we get, it's nice to be able to sit down, watch a football game, not have any stress because, last week with the quarterfinal round, it was a matter of the waiting game with our game getting postponed. And I was sitting there watching the first three games, but kind of having that nervous feeling like, oh, are we going to get it done at the same time when our Georgia game comes up? But certainly nice to be the first team to advance here and excited to see Ohio State and Texas. It's a whole lot of blue bloods in this semifinal round, and those are certainly two of them right there. So going to be a great one tonight.
Looking forward to it. Well, thank you, Tyler, very much for joining me on this first segment. It was great having you on, and make sure viewers stay tuned for our second segment as I bring in one of the biggest Notre Dame fans that I know. So stay tuned for that. Now I'm joined by the biggest Notre Dame fan that I know and a good friend of mine, Carson. Carson, thank you for joining this show to talk about Notre Dame football today. Just 12 hours after their big win against Penn State to put them in the national championship. What were you feeling last night as you saw that big victory go down?
Thank you, Timmy. So last night was just a mix of emotions and everything. Starting at the end of the game, Mitch Jeter with a clutch 41-yard field goal. He's been a little on and off this year. I think if anyone was watching the broadcast, they would know that he had the worst percentage of any kicker this regular season, going 6 for 12 on field goals. But this postseason, he's been clutch. He's only missed one field goal out of his 9 attempted, and that was a block. The ball started to move right off his foot, and just like all of his kicks, swerved right back left at the end of the kick. It was very fortunate. My dad and I watching the game at home, we were very happy, but very mixed emotions in the household as the rest of the people in the house were Penn State fans. So it was definitely a little tough, but I think it was among the mix of emotions. Very happy. My friends and I FaceTimed directly after the kick, and we almost thought that because of the way we started the season, that the possibility of us even having a chance to be in the playoffs, much less the national championship, we're just, I would say, so fortunate and very happy.
Yes, just extremely exciting season overall. As you look back on these last few months, what are some of the highlights that just really stand out for you of this Notre Dame football season?
I would say just the way our run game has been able to develop. Obviously, Riley Leonard, one of the most proficient rushing quarterbacks in the country. He's done really well this season, and that's shown from game one. He had, I think, a pair of rushing touchdowns the first game, and I think he had a rushing touchdown in almost every game this season. That paired with the star sophomore running back duo of Jeremiah Love and Jamarian Price. Those guys have been amazing all season. Love a little banged up this postseason, but Price has done really well in a spot, and you can't take away the credit from the true freshman Aeneas Williams. He's done really well, having a clutch reception last night. That helped the Irish take a late lead, and that's just something that's been really, really good this season. The run game has been great. Obviously, the passing game hasn't been the best, as shown last night. Riley Leonard, actually over 200 yards, but 2 interceptions, just bad throws. But the whole team getting behind him, allowing him to use his legs, as well as the other 3 guys in the offense, it's been really good this season. Additionally, our defense has been spectacular. They've been shut down despite the 4 or 5 injuries to our starting guys. Losing Ben Morrison, I think, in the first 2 games, top 3 cornerback in the country, and then losing our front 4 on defense. So having to have our second string front 4 who's still able to get to the quarterback, still able to put pressure on any team the Irish are playing, it's just been great this season.
That's great. So I know you're trying to get tickets to the national championship. I know those are hard to get, but you were at the home college football playoff game against Indiana. What do you remember about that experience?
So tickets have been hard to come by for the championship. I didn't get the student lottery, but I'm still working on that. But for the Indiana game, that was a scene on campus. Obviously, College Game Day was at Notre Dame, and you just having a home playoff game. The electricity on campus was something different. Obviously, as a student, I've had game day multiple times on campus, but having game day on campus plus the just atmosphere on campus felt different. There, it was cold. Everyone was it was bundled up, but it didn't matter. The tailgating was just as good as it has been in the past. The sea of red that Indiana brought in was a little bigger than a lot of other teams this year, just because of the proximity. They only had to drive a couple hours, but just from everyone on campus, it was amazing. With a late kickoff and late game day, it was definitely a little push towards the end of the day. Campus wasn't buzzing as much towards the morning, like it has been for a lot of games, but just the atmosphere, the tailgating, all spectacular, and that's just before the game. Once we got into the game, Notre Dame had the ball first, or Notre Dame turned the ball over first. Riley Leonard threw a tipped interception. Going back to my point earlier about how our pass game hasn't been great this year, but Xavier Watts, absolute stud on defense. He was able to get a retaliation pick, and then the guy I mentioned earlier, Jeremiah Love, 98-yard touchdown on the next play to just set the expectations for what's to come. From there, Notre Dame pretty much won 27-3. The two touchdowns by Indiana in garbage time, but just Notre Dame was able to build off of Jeremiah Love's presence and the atmosphere of the crowd, and it was just electric.
Yeah, one of the things I remember you telling me is a lot of students at Notre Dame had just finished their exams the day before that game, right? So just an added little nugget or little piece of information there that adds to that excitement of that game. So, our second semifinal game is tonight. Just what are you expecting and what are you maybe looking for as Notre Dame seeks its opponent in the national championship?
I think from Notre Dame's standpoint, our secondary is good, but not great. So I think playing against Ohio State would be a very tough ask. If we're not double covering at least one of Ohio State's receivers, where in the Penn State game, playing cover 1 or cover 2 was definitely the best way to take care of their tight end, Tyler Warren. And the secondary played great for Notre Dame because in the Penn State game, because there was not a single reception by a wide receiver in that game. Ohio State, if we face them, would be a very different game just because they are a very wide receiver and pass-heavy team. That would be, I think, the worst opponent for us. Playing Texas, that would be I think a tough ask as well, but it would be better matchup in terms of Notre Dame. With all the injuries, and I expect to get maybe one or two of the defensive guys back, but as a Notre Dame, as the head coach Marcus Freeman, I think you just have to focus on getting players back to full health in the next couple days, and then you take the week out to prepare for whoever your opponent is, regardless of who it is. Obviously, both teams will be hard to prepare for, and either team would be a very good matchup, making it a very good very good national championship game. But I think Texas would be the better matchup for Notre Dame. Would be a lot closer game, and Ohio State would be a tougher game, but still manageable. I saw the hypothetical spreads last night after Notre Dame's win. Ohio State looked like it was -8 before the game, and Texas -5. I think that would be pretty accurate, just based on how both Texas and Ohio State have played this year. Ohio State's only slip up against Michigan, and their time management against Oregon earlier in the year, but they've been red hot in the playoffs, and it's been tough for teams to even score against them. Oregon went down 34-0 before they had any points, and by that point the game was over. So that's going to be a tough game. Ohio State, Texas, they went to the wire with Arizona State, so that would be, I think, a better matchup for Notre Dame in that sense, because they have allowed a lot of points.
Thank you for joining me, Carson. Well, it's been a great conversation with both Tyler and Carson about Notre Dame football and the historic season that they're having. And their season will end in one way or another on January 20th in the national championship, with their opponent to be determined at the recording of this video.